How's it going?
Oh, not bad, not bad.
I didn't catch you at a bad time, or I don't want to mess up
Uh,
your.
no, no, it's the middle of the day here, so it's nighttime there, right?
Yeah, it's about a little after 9 right here. I'm not used to these. I'm dealing with all the time zone differences and everything, and I'm trying to see where everybody's at. It's hard to gauge that.
Yeah,
So I think you're
it,
ahead of me by like 10 hours, or behind me, or
that's
you're.
right. You want to know what tomorrow's lotto numbers are?
I wish it was that easy. All right, man. Let's get right into it, man. Man, I think I've been following. We've kind of been following each other for like the past few years, and you just like rocketed ahead of me, with all the projects and stuff that you have going on. So, well, tell me how you got started with all of this.
Um, oh, yeah, I think I've done this before, when Greg and Troy were doing this. They were doing the podcasts.
Yeah, but Greg
So
and
maybe we
Troy
can.
fell off.
They did.
Yeah.
We'll just cut and paste that part of the podcast.
Oh, yeah. I mean that's totally fine. But like I said, I know you're definitely with these frames and stuff you got going on now. At least I don't think that was going on when they recorded their cast. So
No, no, that's right. Yeah, no. So that's what I've been up to lately. I actually haven't been around a great deal much. Yeah, as you said, I guess early on. I don't even know how long I've been around now in Atmosphere. Maybe 6 years, something like that.
yeah,
Um, yeah, obviously had a bit more time then, and sort of was online and more time to play bikes, and yeah, time marches on, and work and family and everything else, and now I don't get very much time to play with my own gear and to do as much testing and building as I did before.
I think it's like
So
between marriage and a kid, and then you had a medical issue. You just kind of got side.
yeah, that was a bit of a setback.
But
That
that
took me
was
out of
like when
action for a while.
you was really starting to get into it. And it's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, that was slowed me down a little bit, and
you recovered
unfortunately
all right
there's a
from that.
yeah, pretty much. Ironically, I mean, I was obviously sort of mad into e-bikes before, but due to the complications of chemo and radiotherapy and stuff, it's kind of wrecked my heart and lungs a bit. So I couldn't ride a normal bicycle now if I wanted to. So the e-bike is the only way I could sort of get out and do those sorts of things now. So I mean, I can pedal on the flat, but any hills or any sort of load, and I just get dizzy and fall over, which is
Well,
kind of funny, but not for me.
it's like it's weird. It's weird. It's like you got everybody fooled on that front. Like looking at all the videos and everything that you post is like, well, of course I know it's an electric bike and you really don't have to put any effort in it whatsoever. But man, you be
Yeah.
editing some nice videos.
Thanks. Yeah, I've got like hours of footage that I just haven't had time to edit because it's so time consuming that for every 5 minute video you post, there's probably 10 plus hours of time to actually
Yeah,
edit that.
yeah.
So
If you really give a damn about your production value, yeah, it takes a lot of
yeah, yeah,
time.
you could slap together 10 minutes of helmet cam footage, but it's a bit boring. So yeah, I think if I'm going to do it, I'll try and at least put a bit of effort in, or be upfront and say here's an uncut footage of me racing around like an idiot. So,
And I know that like you kind of got a little bit of a following, or well, I mean, y'all used to have like group rides and stuff down there to where y'all would kind of gang
yeah,
up and cause some shenanigans.
that's right, and we've sort of been trying to organise something else like that again, and again, just finding the time. I work kind of 2.5 jobs, so I often work on the weekends as well now. So that's before we consider any e-bike stuff. So yeah, just free time is slim, and yeah, family stuff. It's kind of frowned upon if I'm around one day a week and I decide to go out and ride bikes on that day. So I don't have that amount of time as much anymore, but I'm hoping to get back to it when I can sort of get things settled down with work and whatnot. So
It's like I honestly
yeah,
thought that you had like almost went into the e-bike thing full time, especially when you launched your website and started doing the kits and everything else. I thought you was leaning towards that full time.
yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of training in my day job sort of thing. So I wouldn't want to throw that away. But certainly the e-bikes were always my much more my interest. And that does kind of try to overtake my day job sometimes. Fortunately, I get a bit of flexibility, so I get some downtime to shoot off emails and things. But it's just it's very time consuming,
And then you, and,
and so,
and then I think your reach was a little bit international to where you even reached out to me to handle some of your dirty work a
yeah,
little
that's
bit.
right.
I was like,
Thanks for bearing those bodies for me. That was good. Um,
yeah, they still
yeah, no,
contact me
and
every once in a while.
yeah, I get probably equal amounts of interest from overseas as I do from local sales. I don't do any advertising. I just my videos I do for fun anyway. Um, so I put those out there and I get a lot of exposure through YouTube. I don't even know what my view count is these days, but it's it's over 1 million I think on the hits for the different videos, which is I know for a guy tooling around an electric bike, I guess it's not too bad, but yeah, the a lot of interest from overseas, particularly with the some of the newer sort of frames I'm building on now and the turnkey bikes. And although I just can't give up the day job that I've got because the mortgage and all that sort of stuff hinges on it. And e-bikes are a bit hit and miss. You might get one inquiry a week, and then it might be one a month, and then you get three in a day. And there's a lot of tire kickers out there that for every 10 emails you get, you might get one person that actually follows through on it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I'm looking at the same
so
thing kind
I
of on my.
wouldn't like to rely on
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at like visits on my website. I get like, 50, 60 visits a day. I'm like, oh, that's not like a lot. I'm not like big balling, but I'm like, all of y'all just like poking around. And I'm like, and I got a little chat thing that pops up to see, hey, you need any help or, whatever. And like nobody really replies back. I'm like, so it's like hit and miss. And I have dry
it.
spells and my sales are kind of dependent on holidays and when school's in session, when school's out of session and all of that. So I know what you mean. It's like something that you really can't count on. But I mean, but like I've talked with other people like Gary Salo at Golden Motor, and he turned that into a full time gig. And I'm like doing a cast with him, and I'm hearing this stuff popping off in the background. So I guess it just really depends on if you put all your eggs in one basket and you really want to pursue it. You probably could, but you're in Australia, which is kind of a not necessarily you're down there by yourself, and so
It's the arse end of the world. That's right.
like
It's
shipping.
complete. The shipping, shipping is a nightmare. So I mean, as everyone sort of knows, most of this gear comes out of China. So
Yeah.
shipping it, China's kind of central. It's good, and I mean, if you are serious about global dominance, which maybe one day for high-end electric bikes, then setting up a base of operations in China would be the sensible way to do it, and then you could just sort of ship in the same direction or the same distance pretty much in every direction to the different to the US and Europe and Australia.
Or do like
But
some of the people do here in the U.S. and stay near the shipping hubs. I think one is up in New York, New Jersey, and then the other one is in California somewhere. Find a shipping port somewhere, and uh,
yeah, yes, San Francisco,
yeah,
Oakland, I think is where one of the big ports is there. So
but
yeah, I mean it's hard again. It's then it's the financial thing that to make the things more affordable. You got to buy in bulk, and you got to buy say 50 units of the motors or whatever
and
to get
sit
a
on
bit
it,
of a discount.
and then you got to
Yeah,
sit
and that
on it.
means then you've I've got to potentially invest 50 or 100 grand and have that sort of tied up and hope that people are going to want to come along and buy this stuff. So for me sort of personally, it's not at that level. It's kind of you're buying in small quantities and you're paying for the most part paying air shipping on stuff, which is very expensive, and it's just a cost you got to pass along. It costs you that amount, you pass that on to the end customer. And I guess
Yeah,
being fairly small scale, it's more of a boutique kind of sort of thing rather than your department store type bikes. But
I think it's all about exposure and marketing because there are some people like, you know, here it is. We have Barrett Hoffman up here, and he said, he's probably bought several hundred Mux's motors over the past year. So apparently he's moving
mm,
enough to where it's worth
yeah,
his while.
he's bitten the bullet. Yeah, is he doing that full time though as a job or
Oh no, well no, he's not doing it full time, but it's enough to
yeah?
sustain it as a hobby. And then he also got attached to the Saunders thing, and he's building the replacement batteries, the
Okay,
extended
yep,
range could replace it batteries for the Saunders bike. But
Right. And
Um,
that's a perfect example, isn't it, of this economy of scale that if you get, hundreds to thousands of people on board, you can turn stuff out
yeah,
for,
and
next to nothing.
but it's unfortunately you have to do things almost like a crowd campaign. You know, you offer something,
That's right.
show that it's reliable, and then use other people's money um, to
Yeah, that's
make
right.
your millions or whatever, make your thousands. But let's try to figure
Make
out
your
what.
dinner in some cases. Yeah.
Oh man, been there. You know. But let's go on to this Flux bike. Like what's the deal behind it? I know you are manufacturing frames to a certain extent, and then something with the stealth bomber or stealth fighter, and then different swapping out
Yeah.
different motors.
So I mean, I've had my own frame design for forever. That I've been sort of talking. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to produce my own. My ideal, perfect e-bike that I think is good. And typically if I think it's good, then probably a lot of others are going to think the same. And there's sort of a lot of interest in that. And I had a few prototypes made, and it was very expensive. Each one cost me thousands to get a bike made, and then I changed the design a bit. And then I was doing the Raptors for a while. Still am still sort of building with those. Those guys came along out of I think Slovenia they are, and so I sort of started building bikes with those because it was just easier that they had all the jigs made, and they were making the bikes, and I could just build on that as a platform. But it still wasn't exactly what I wanted. I sent them some designs and said, hey, are you guys interested in building this design? You've got your jigs, you've got production sorted, and they weren't interested, and it's fair enough. They're doing their own things. Um, and then it was just, yeah, it was, small scale. And again, I thought, unless I invest, big chunks of money in this, it's just not going to, that's not going to happen. And yeah, then Stealth came along. So I've been kind of tied up with Stealth for a while. I think they came on this sort of e-bike scene just before I did. So I remember when I signed up to Endless Fear, um, the guy that runs Stealth had sort of posted his pictures of this prototype bomber that he'd sort of built, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. But yeah, over the years, Stealth is probably. I'd hate to think how many emails they probably got saying, "Hey, will you guys just sell us a frame? Your bikes are really cool, but we don't want to pay, 8 or 10 grand. We want just the frame, and we'll DIY." And forever their answer has been no, 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 no. And you can see why. And they're probably one of the biggest e-bike names in the world. For sort of performance e-bikes. So they had their market, but I can't take the credit for it. The credit actually has to go to Rick's. Rick's on the forum. Rick, he hassled them endlessly to make a DIY version of the frame as well. And I'd actually given up because I'd asked them a lot, and I thought I'm just giving them the shit. So clearly they don't want to do it. So that's fine. But yeah, he kept at them, and in the end, that they agreed that they would that they would make these frames. So they're not sold under the as a Stealth brand. It's designed by the same guy, built in the same factory. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is a Stealth, but just not technically the same the same badge on it.
I
So
mean,
they're sort of sold under the Flux brand.
and that is awesome. And what's the retail pricing or the pre-order? What's the retail
The
versus
retail.
pre-order pricing?
What's the retail? To quote the Fast and the Furious, more than you can afford, pal.
I mean,
uh, no, so we did a pre-order. I can't remember off the top of my head now. It was about 900, I think, US for the something like that for the frames.
I mean, that's
To
relative. That's on par compared to the other vendors that are out there. You know, we have the carbon fiber one that Dr. Base is building up, and of course
Yep,
there've
yep,
been plenty of phasers and Raptors and everything that's been out now. So that's kind of on par. It's just like one of the depressing things about getting one of these frames is it's just the frame, and then you still got to look at a double, triple crown fort, which is another $500+ and it can really get out of
that's
hand
right.
before you even start getting to the electrical parts of it. So
Exactly. Yeah, you think the frame. I mean, obviously, a purpose-built frame like that is the backbone of your build, and you want to get that right. But yeah, it quickly adds up. And when I first sort of was in discussions with them about the quantities that we'd need to make, and that I would sort of buy, and I thought, oh, I'll buy a couple of build them up for a couple of my mates, and we can have a little fleet. We can go riding and. And so yeah, I bought a couple of these, and yeah, exactly as you said, it's like $1,000 for the frame is only the start. Then it's as you said, the forks and the suspension, and the wheels. A bolt through, a 20 mil bolt through front wheel is not cheap.
But
And then obviously the motor and the batteries, and yeah, it adds up that what you think is, oh, I'm getting this for $1,000, but then it still pushes
it's
on
it's
to
probably
well
it's
past that.
roughly closer to about 4 to 5 thousand by the time it's all said and done. But looking at how much a stealth costs, you're kind of doing pretty good, you know.
Well, that's right. I mean, yeah. The other thing is too is you can build them exactly how you want. So, there's a number of people getting around that buy stealth fighters, which are the smaller one. That's what I used to have. I had a couple of them actually over the years, and yeah, they buy them and they never take them off road. They just they put crazy bobs on them, that semi slick sort of tire, and just use them for commuting, because that was their only option for a semi powerful turnkey bike. Um, so now, I mean, a lot of the endless sphere sales predominantly are going to the builders that can make it themselves. But I will use these as a platform as well to build up the sort of kits that I've been doing over the years anyway. Um, up to sort of 5,000 watts is you can get away with on a heavy duty bike, but beyond that, I know guys do it, but it's not really ideal to have that amount of power on a bicycle. It's just not designed for it. So, and for the cost of these things now, it's for a little bit extra,
I mean,
you've got the safety and the strength and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, and I totally
yeah,
agree. It's like, you have these purpose-built frames now, and their quality and everything and how they're made and how they're designed is well above anything else that's on the market right now. And like I said, here it is. I'm using production giant bikes, and I definitely would like something solid. I did try to put all of my eggs in one basket with that e-bike deal frame, and that ended up being a failure. And so I've been trying to wait for things to kind of level out and people to complete their projects. And then I also been waiting for that right time with my business to where I can really go out and try to tackle one of these new frame bills. I mean they're out there. It's just, man, it's a lot of money to sink into it. You know, I
yeah,
can I can go down the cheap route and try to upgrade as much of the bike components as I can, but realistically, nothing beats that solid built frame. And I think the only thing that I've been concerned about over the past few years is the torque that these motors develop now, and how you're going to keep it in the dropouts. That's been the main
yeah.
thing the past few years. And like I said, I finally got into the Muxus crowd, and of course, I'm not sure which ones you're running. Are you running Crow, or are you running the Crowns,
A
or
bit of everything. I mean, I used to use the Muxus motors years back, the smaller ones. So it was 9C for a while. So I did a big group buy, probably 2010 or something like that, because they weren't available in Australia. I know they were big in the US, and they just they weren't available here. The only way to get one was to um, basically import one from the US, get them from Justin at Grin or e-bike CA. And as much as I didn't want to take any business away from him, it was $200. I'll just ship a laced motor across, plus whatever the motor was itself. So I got a bunch of those in, and they were really popular. And then I was using the Muxus ones in my sort of lower powered kits, 2 kilowatt. Because the other thing is too is what the DIY crowd does for themselves and what you build for someone else is a different story. That if we want to stick 5 kilowatts into a little geared motor and it blows up, well then that's our own and that's our own silly fault. But if you build something for someone else and they don't know, they're just saying, hey, can you build this for me? Then you want it to be reliable, so you can't sort of overpower it too much. And
yeah,
likewise, don't go bolting nuclear arc reactors on the Kmart bikes are just not smart.
yeah. You don't want to be a high powered
So
cycle. Just like, oh yeah, I got this BMC motor and I'm putting 5,000 watts through. Like, what? Even when I had a
yeah, well,
BMC, I had a
I
BMC
wasn't going to
column.
name names, but that's exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, I ran a BMC, and of course, it was like maybe like a 10T, and I maybe was putting in like 3,000 or 3,500 watts, and I'm like, this is awesome. There's no way that this can take, any more. And then here it is. They found a way to make a even hotter wine to make it even go faster. I'm like, really? I mean, I don't mind. I mean, I know that you're in a position to where like you don't want to sling words or call names, but it's common knowledge.
It's out there.
We
It's
know
on the
who
web.
they
It's there
are.
forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I always take jabs and poke fun at it. I'm like, where do y'all get these? I mean, I understand they spend. I wouldn't say they spend their own custom motors, but they get Crystalite to make some of the most absurd windings. Like I said, I think the 35 series was a 3595, and then they made a 4100. And I'm like, what the fuck where are you getting these numbers from that you think it's okay to put this on the bike, but they somehow making it work. And I'm like, you have to live in like the flatlands of Kansas or something in order to enjoy it. Because if I were to get one of those bikes, I would promptly burn that thing up the first day I had it just by climbing all the
The
hills and
secret
stuff
is
like that
you've
here.
got a slipstream behind trucks on the highway. That's the only way that they last,
You
right
know,
in a vacuum.
if
But yeah, I mean, that crystallite naming convention is partially crystallite's fault because they name them on the voltage that you're going to run and then the speed in kilometers an hour that they'll do. So yeah, Stealth for a while there on their fighters were running 35, 48 sort of motors, which were or 45, which were 35 mil stator that ran at 45 kilometers an hour or something like that. And then I got a bunch of motors and said, right, I want to run them on 72 volts. I want them, I had them spec'd with the better halls and the better bearings. And I said, I'm going to run them on 72 volts. And so then they called them a 35, no, sorry, 40, 60 and 4080. So that's when
yeah,
the
I have a
H40 motors first came in. Which is what's used on that's what they're exclusively designed for HPC,
yeah.
as the sticker says. So yeah, that's when they first came about, and yeah, yeah,
I mean, like I said, I remember your evolution through the H40 motors. I think you had a H4060, and then you kind of beat that to death for a little while, and you went to the H4080. And then, like I said, it's hard to keep up with you sometimes because every time I look around, there's something drastically new or drastically different. I'm not the stalker person, but you just like I said, you've been through so many things, testing stuff, and I remember like you was posting like, "Ooh, I painted my frame." I'm like, "Oh, that looks good." And next thing you got that built, and you shot another video. I'm like, dang, is your build thread ever going to end?
my build flat's been neglected a lot lately. Actually, I don't think I've updated in a long
But
time.
I think
I've
I
been
think
doing a lot of things that I haven't posted about. Yeah.
But I think other people have been carrying on your build thread, or at least like keeping it up and running to where it pops up occasionally in my most recent thing. I think is it Rick's down there, and a whole bunch of other people that are in Australia. They just
Well, Rick's he's in the US. He's in Nevada.
trying to figure out who is it that keeps bumping up your thread, because
Because
I swear they have
yeah,
full
because
fledged conversations in your thread, like you're
yeah,
still running it.
there's yeah a few of the few yeah a few carry on the torch. Yeah, no, I've recently sort of signed up to I don't do sort of much Facebook stuff, but sort of stick my head occasionally for the Endless Sphere Facebook. So that sort of seems to be running in parallel to the forum, I guess.
I think
It
they're
seems to
they're
be
two
some
separate
people are on
beasts.
there, but not.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I sort of occasionally post there, and I've got my own sort of Hyena Facebook page. I chuck stuff I'm on occasionally. I guess more as specifically to do with the kits and the bikes I'm building and kind of
Yeah, I think this Facebook
pseudo
endless fear.
promotional type stuff.
I think this Facebook endless fear thing is like if you want to answer right then and there, you're probably more apt to get an answer quickly from Facebook. Endless fear requires weeding through information, and a lot of people don't want to sit and do that. So I mean, we constantly get friend requests every day, and then they'll ask their question, and we'll lay into them with the truth, and it's I think it's we're coming
Yeah.
along as a endless fear veteran. It's like you're saying the same questions that we were asking a few years ago. We see them come in, and we're like, "What are you doing?" Or like read the forum, or it's already been answered. And but the thing is, things are still
Hey
changing.
guys, I've got $1,000. I want to build a bike that does 100 miles an hour and goes
Hell
for two
yeah.
days. Yeah, sure.
you know,
I want
uh,
everything for nothing.
oh man, and it's like looking at how much, like the motors cost now or controllers cost now. I also want to get on the controller tangent. Like, how you liking that Sabaton controller?
They're good. Yeah, I mean, they're only what are they? They're a 24 fit. I think they run 4110s, but they run really well compared to the old style Infineon controllers that we all sort of used to play with.
Yeah, I'm still on one of
And they run
those.
cool. They run so cool. Like I've built them in. I like to keep everything as neat, clean looking as possible, and keep things out of the weather. So I like to, if possible, put my controllers inside with these newer frames. Put them inside the frame. It keeps them from taking hits. It keeps the mud out, keeps the water out, and it just looks nicer. And I've raced. I had a race bike electric vehicle festival, and had it running 12 kilowatts and sealed up inside the frame, and it didn't miss a beat. So yeah, I blew up a motor in the process, but that was my own fault. I knew what was going to happen. So um, yeah, but no, they're really good. They're sometimes they're a bit problematic to program. They do this auto hall detect sort of business that they go through, and I've got a batch at the moment that just for some reason don't want to detect the halls. They just sit there. I put a video up there that actually on Inmosphere that was just this buzzing sort of sound that it was making instead of turning the wheel like it should and working out the full angle. But other than that, yeah, no, they're good, and they're a bit cheaper than the Adapto sort of equivalents. So the usual crowd that's on a budget and they want the most performance for the least amount of money, I think they're a good way to go. And because they have got the extra, the mass and the big alloy case and the fins, they can sink a lot of heat even without a lot of airflow. So you can put them inside the frame without worrying about them getting too hot and bothered.
Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah,
in
no,
looking at the weight of the controller and how, I mean, they're almost built like the Kelly and Curtis controllers that are used in cars. There's nothing but a big, huge slab of metal in there versus the little
that's right.
tiny,
Yeah,
tiny aluminum bar
I think
that's in the Infineons.
well, I think the base plate of the base of the controller is where the FETs are bolted to,
Yeah,
and they're I think it's maybe 6 or 8 mil thick, aluminium or aluminum, as you guys say.
yeah,
There's an I in there,
yeah.
There's an extra I in there that you don't pronounce.
Oh man. All right. You Bobby Dazzler.
Don't get
Yeah.
smart with me, boy.
But yeah, I mean, I mean, and they also got to be used in different fats, and I mean, they got to be taking advantage of at least like 247 packages or larger or something, or
You would think so, wouldn't you? But they're not. They're everything. A
wow,
usual story out of China. They want to save $1, and so they'd rather build a controller with 50 TO2 20 package FETs than step up to the obvious sensible choice. I've got some controls I've been testing with the 247 FETs, which are obviously a nicer way to go, and that's what the adapters use. You can use 12 FET version. One of those can spit out a heap of power, but they're not sine wave. They're the old modified sort of square wave or whatever. So they haven't got that nice sort of silky smooth feeling and total silence that you get. So
yeah. One of the
I've been on their back and they reckon they're coming, but they're not here yet.
one of the things that's getting on my nerves with these XC Change or Infinia or Z Chain and Infinia controls is like I'm getting to the point where I'm pushing so much power that I'm picking up all types of growl and harmonics coming out of the monitor, and it's like I going down the road and mine's vented, so it's like a guitar case and it's like howling up until you get past 20 miles an hour, then it starts to quiet down, and then next thing you know, you just got all this wind noise at that point. So, I mean, I think, and also it's like the regenerative braking on the Sabaton that I keep on hearing so much about, and I'm like, I'm scared to get into it because, like I said, I don't have a frame that probably can support that much regen. I mean, I'm using regen, but the Sabaton regen is next level shit. So, um,
Well, it's proportional though. You can run I'm starting to look at them now with a second thumb throttle, so you can ease it on. It doesn't have to be just that on-off whack. I mean, that's how I broke an axle actually in that first bike race that I had a while back, where I'd built the bike literally the night before. I just finished at midnight putting it together, usual last minute rush, and through the Sabaton and did some crude programming, and it had this regen hiccup or something wasn't programmed correctly, where it had that what they call a slip charge or the throttle off regen. So as soon as you back off, it tries to go into regen. Um, I then disabled that, but it would still try to do it. So as soon as you backed off, it would go clunk into regen and then switch off. So every time you backed off, you just get this savage clunk of,
You know,
12 kilowatts full and
but
whack,
one
and that wear back and forwards, yeah, snap the axle.
but one of the things that I was that on a specific motor because like I said, I have the 4060 or 4065, and I've ran that at 66 volts, and the regen is like stupid strong on that motor, and compare it to like a four turn Muxus or something. So it makes me wonder, is it associated with the turn count on the motor to where, like if it's a high turn count motor, it's just building absurd amount of back EML versus like a high turn.
Exactly, exactly, yeah. So I think the slower the motor, the less, if you've got a really high speed wind, but you've got to be doing the speed for the back EMF for it to sort of kick as well. So if you've got a slower speed motor, you don't get a lot of regen out of it. Unless you get the faster ones, and they'll pull up, or they'll pull up the faster you go, the more they pull you up. If you're not using proportional, if you're just using a simple sort of on-off regen. But I ran on my first stealth, the white one, the 5 kilowatt fighter I had. It had regen, and it was all right. It was okay. But the one that I broke was actually a crown motor, so it had quite a decent axle, but it was just 12 kilowatts. And it was on a racetrack, so it was twists and turns and things, and you'd be constant full power and full brakes, then full power, full brakes, and
Yeah.
after 7 laps or something of this thing of clunk 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 every time I backed off. Um, it snapped it. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, no matter how strong the axle is, I mean, these guys there's been a few broken crystallite axles, and with the weaker ones on the sort of the H40s and H35s, and there's a Tench, the guy in the UK that was making the strong, custom aftermarket axles from good strong steel rather than the cheese alloy that the Chinese use, and even people were breaking those. I think Ken Pendragon in Adelaide,
Yeah.
in Australia here, he had one, and it broke again because he had a crook setting in his, I think it was in his cyclone last, it was sending some sort of pulse, a jerking throttle signal or something that was not right there, a loose wire, or I can't remember what it was now, but he got this replacement axle, he put it in without sorting out the underlying issue, and it broke the stronger axle as well. So you get
Well,
those strong jolting forces, and there's not a lot that can withstand it.
I mean, like I said, there's two things is trying to dampen or putting it's sort of like you can't have weak regen and stop with regen. You can't have the best of both worlds. In most cases,
I
and
think you
then
can. You can, but it's about how it kicks in. So if you can ease it on, and then like normal brakes, if you're just belting along and you just jam your brakes on hard, apart from
yeah,
going over the handlebars, if you've got the thumb throttle, and you can ease it on, and then once it's a transition from full power to suddenly whack, torque in the opposite direction. So if you can ease it on, I think you can get away with higher power, and that's one of the settings in the Sabaton. You can set the phase current with the regen that's going back into the the battery as well, but how much of it is just how hard it pulls up,
I mean,
which is nice as well.
it seems like the Sabotage controller is doing a lot more than what the psycho. I mean, the psychoanalyst, at least it helps with the throttle ramping a little bit, but it seems like that function is also built into the Sabotage also. So it seems like you
It
all.
is. There's a lot of redundancy actually. So I mean, you could with the Sabaton really, um, it does a lot of parallels, a lot of the features of the V3 that are brilliant about it. It does temperature monitoring. It does. I don't think it does quite as good on the thermal rollback, but it has a limited current mode. So you
Oh,
set the maximum temperature, you set the um, temperature, then when it will the current at the maximum temperature. So if you go over say 110 degrees, it'll drop the wattage down to, the current down to 20 amps max, and then you can say, okay, when it gets back to 90 degrees, and we have full power back. So it'll do all that, built into the hardware.
yeah,
So
that
without
that's
any,
that's not as sexy as the V3. At least the V3 with the thermal throttling is a little bit more progressive, so it isn't a
that's right. It's
total
more
loss of.
linear. Yep.
Yeah, it's not a total dropout of power. It warns you. You actually feel it in the bike before you actually get to the maximum limit. But if you made it to the maximum limit, then you deserve to get knocked down and not. So,
That's right. That's what I said in the thread the other day to you there. Welcome to Shitsville. Population you. Pedaling
yeah,
a 50 kilo or 100 plus pound bike, you're in strife.
yeah, and
But
I'm
yeah, I mean, it's good though. But at a bare minimum, from a cost point of view, for noobs or whatever that are going to blow something up, at least it keeps them out of trouble. And you could potentially get away with just a voltage gauge, a simple playing with these LCD bar graph, cheap little voltage gauges that it's just capacity basically when the voltage gets down and a fairly with the we know our lithium discharge curves and at the minimum for people who are on a budget, you could get away with that.
But the
And the
thing,
throttle ramp as well. So you just sorry, go on.
no, I was gonna say, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's like me and Darren are talking to the people, or we're talking to the people that offering the Saunders Facebook group, and it was even hard for them to get like a $9, $10 GT watt meter to figure out some of the basic stuff that a e-biker needs. I mean, I've never been the person to just go out there and ride until the battery dies, and these people are like doing that, and I'm like, at least get a simple freaking $10 meter, and it will tell you so much if you don't want to buy a psychoanalyst or the display that goes with the Saunders bike or whatever. At least spend $10 instead of spending it on spoke lights and little snap click
Yeah,
things on the spoke. I mean, they're spending their money on totally stupid shit over there. And I was like, put your money on something useful, I mean, it just, I'm going on a side tangent here, but I mean, the Saunders bike would be good if you put another $200 to $300 with it. It'll be a decent fat bike, but they're just doing stupid shit over there, and I can't get down with that. So,
yeah. Well, I
but
mean, you say to people, would you drive a car without, a dashboard? Would you drive around with your headlights off and not know what, you're doing? I guess some motorbikes, I've got an older bike that I was going to sort of convert, and it didn't have a fuel gauge, and I thought, how can I ride a bike with no fuel gauge? But a lot of motorbikes don't have a fuel gauge. You've got a
no.
reserve, and when it starts to splutter, you flick it over and find a gas station.
And now we're just getting to the point where like we're just carrying absurd capacity. I mean, especially now since we got 20 amp hour multi stars now, and the multi
Yeah,
stars have
it's
they've been
I don't
handling
know.
it.
I don't like it. I don't like it as much. I mean, it depends on your purpose, but it seems in recent years, particularly, since lithium polymer came along, I remember in the early days, it's like, oh, it was a good way for us to get good power without having to have big packs. That you can have a 10 amp hour pack and get good performance out of it. Whereas prior to that, you had to have 20 or God forbid 30 amp hour packs to get the sort of C rating you needed to get the performance.
Yeah,
But now everyone's gone just power mad. Everyone wants Chrome motors and they want to have 20 and 30 amp hour capacities, and everyone's building these giant frames that hold ridiculous capacities. And it's like I mean, it's okay if you want it as a
I think.
as an electric motorbike, but it's not really an electric bicycle as much anymore when it weighs more than you do. Well, maybe not yourself, but
Well, I mean, like
it's
when
getting
I'm
up there.
carrying my bike pretty much weighs probably a little bit under 100, and 28 pounds of that is the battery. And then
Yeah,
another 20 some odd pounds is the motor, and probably another 30 in wheel. So maybe not, it's probably closer to 80-ish,
mm.
80, 85-ish when it comes to, having my full pack and everything, but I'm running a 66 volt, 32 amp hour pack. I do not need it in 90% of my rides. I do not need anything over 10 amp hours. So me
Well,
having a
and that's what
30,
I say about. I think 12 amp hour is the sweet spot because when I go for rides, I'm the same as like you. I rarely go over 10 amp hours. It's nice to have the reserve, so you don't have the range anxiety. But all these people go, oh, I want a 20 or a 30 amp hour battery, and I'm like, where are you really going to ride it? You're lugging around the extra weight. If you're going to
I mean, there's always
charge it and discharge it conservatively, then yeah, it's good for the ride.
there's always certain things that I want to do on my bike. I want to do some long distance traveling or whatever. And so, yeah, having a 2.3 kilowatt hour battery pack seems nice, but it just seems like most of my rides last maybe 3 hours. And by that time, sitting in the saddle that long, stuff starts to talk to you. And you're like, you know what? I don't, I don't want to. I don't want to go anymore. I just want to get back to my car, get back home, and put some ice down in my nether regions. You know.
So that's where your username comes from, huh?
I don't think of it that way, but yeah. I mean, it's definitely like, I mean, I've never, I mean, especially ever since one of the reasons why I started building these larger packs is just so I can get more lifetime out of the packs, to where I'm not doing these full sweep cycles And like I said, that's where the multi-stars kind of came into play. Like the 16 amp hour, the performance and the capacity, I think for me is right where it needs to be. I would rather run a 60 volt, 16 amp hour battery, only three connections. You don't have to have all of these series parallel harnesses and everything. It's just, three
Oh yeah,
packs
it
per
makes it
system.
much easier for building packs for
Yeah,
sure.
and especially your little find of the BC 168 charter, that was a jewel, but I think we were pushing those things a little bit too hard. We probably should have been using those things closer to 4 amps versus 8, unless you went in and did some rewiring and brought them up to
Well,
like
I've
eight.
actually used one. Yeah, I have rewired it some because the board got quite beefy traces, and obviously the JST plugs are the weak link. They're
Yeah,
a 2 amp rated connector. So, but I've got probably about 16 gauge wire coming off each board, each contact on the board, so they don't get hot at all. Because yeah, going to those big packs, yeah, as you said, even charging at 8 amps, that's 2 hours per pack.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, it was
Charging.
nice, but it was still. I remember, like I said, I remember you creating the video, the charging video for the customers for your battery, and I'm like, it's a nice pack, and honestly, the pack. I mean, the charger came in nicely when I had some packs that were out of balance, but I just couldn't, deal with that charge time. It's a nice balancing charger, but it's
Yeah, use it once a month or something. And I mean, I'm forever on bulk charge. I mean, it's a do as I say, not as I do type thing. But
yeah,
for other people, yeah, you'd say you should balance charge or whatever. But realistically, one of my first bikes, the pack was 2 years when it was sort of died, and I think I balanced it once. I checked it. I check it every couple of I check it once a week, and I check it once a month, and I check it every couple of months. And then in the end, it was like, oh, it's been a year. I better check the balance, and it was within really close tolerance.
yeah,
Just didn't need. It was only when the cells were almost dead that they started to get a whack, and then it was like, well, they're sagging. I've got 2 years out of it. Treat it as consumable and just chuck it. And by then the new hotness was out, and more capacity and lighter, and the usual story of progression with things. So people say that to me all the time. Oh, I want to get 10 years out of this battery, and I want this and I want that. And I'm like, you know what?
good
After
luck.
2 or 3 years, the technology is going to be better. You're going to want to upgrade. You're going to want something that's half the weight and half the size. Like,
And honestly, that's what's been going on the past few months, at least with the multi-star batteries. You have 20% reduction in weight, 20% increase in capacity, and roughly probably and all of that within the same space. Because I remember
yeah.
having
Well, it's,
have
it's, it's kind of like 18650s, isn't it? With the you're
oh yeah,
trading
yeah,
off
yeah,
because
yeah.
the C rating's not there with the multi stars, is it? They don't
It's
perform
not
at
the yeah
super.
the single P multi-stars kind of suck. Like the I guess it's
10
the
amp hour.
8 amp hours, 10 amp hours, 8 amp hours, 10 amp hours, and I think possibly the 12 amp hours are still 1P, but the 16 amp hours is 2P, so it's artificially has a lower IR, so it can put out more. So like I
Because
tend,
they're rated at what 10C, aren't they? But they're not really. I mean,
yeah, they're rated at 10C. The 1P packs are realistically, if you want to stay above 3.6, 3.7 volts of cell for the entire discharge, they're realistically rated at 2.5C. But
yeah,
the 16 amp hours, I can get 4 to 5C out of those. And so I've been using that on my 80 amp bike, 80 amp controller. I guess 18 is LAN 18 FET controller. I've been running 2P of two 16 amp hour batteries, but one could satisfy that quite fine. So that's where, that's why I say that's the perfect pack all around versus these 10 amp hour packs and all that. They're really not up to the task unless you really have like a low power legal build, maybe a 40. Um,
yeah, or a geared motor or something like that. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
for a geared motor with a two 6S packs, 12S, 16 amp hour, they're perfect. One single plug together and off you go. But yeah, if you want to run high performance, but as you said, running 2P, 5C is, for most people is good enough.
yeah,
2 or 3C, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. But a genuine 5C is good because even at 5C at that current rating, you're only going to spike that occasionally anyway,
yeah,
long
yeah.
enough. You're not really doing that continuously. So.
Yeah, so I think basically I think it was like Alan Hugh recently built an 84 volt 20 amp hour battery and spent maybe 300 or $350, and
Yeah,
uh, and that's
you can't
that's
argue with that, can you?
that's really nice. You really can't complain, with that. It has the punch and everything that you need. You just gotta, babysit it and deal with some wiring. But like a person like me, I made harnesses for like a few years. I just get my crimper out and test the packs first, but then permanently parallel them and just reduce the wiring by a good bit. And I'm still a
Yeah, and
fan
that's what
of.
I do too. The people that make all these spaghetti things, I think those days it should be, well, they're not for some people, but with the tech we've got
I mean,
now, these days should be behind us.
yeah, I
They
mean,
should buy your harnesses.
I stopped selling them because it's just end up being a lot of work, and a lot of people don't appreciate, or why do I need that much? Why does a harness cost that much? I'm like, all right, you do that shit yourself, and see and try to do it, and then realize like, oh, I've bitten off
Yeah.
too much. Let me go back to Chris, and you end up spending more than you would originally just buying a harness from me. But it's just like I really
Yeah,
wasn't
I
getting.
hear this all the time. It's a recurring story, isn't it? It's like, I'll just go and buy the packs from Hobby King and make it myself. And then you get a call a month later. It's like, I just blew up this and I've blown up my charger and all my wiring's melted. Can you make it for me now? And it's like, yeah, I did try to tell you this. It's not as easy as, noobs come along to Endless and they see us doing it easily and think, yeah, just do this, this, and this. But yeah, it's easy to get yourself in strife and end up with KFF.
Hey, I think my issue was is like I was okay with the news, but once you have the news that's trying to do high power, I couldn't address that crowd. There really wasn't good connectors where I could still maintain that simplified
Yeah.
Anderson block. And I think like right now we have XT90s now, and I think with the right amount of epoxy and gluing the connectors together, I probably could revisit that again, at least kind of make 100 amp capable harnesses again.
Yeah,
But it's
and
just
again, you're only split second sort of stuff, isn't it, for most people,
yeah.
unless you're a bit mad. But
But Andersons are totally done for. That used to be the shit. Now I'm like, you know what?
yeah, no,
Even for 30
and
amps, I'm like kind of nervous about that.
yeah, I only use them for charging now for Anderson.
Exactly.
So
And even with me with charging, I have the 406 Duo, which can charge 6S packs at 50 amps, and I
oh,
even
that's
split
nice.
the I split the packs off into two banks, and I still ended up melting Anderson. So anything that's carrying a lot of current, I've been using XT150s that for anything that's carrying serious current, and I never had any issues with it. Some people don't like them because they say the spring retention force kind of relaxes on them and they feel kind of loose, but nothing a screwdriver can't fix. Just
Yeah,
shovel.
I don't like them because they're a bastard to get the case on. You get solder them, and
Oh,
you can never get their bloody cases on.
I mean, it's a
It's deform or
yeah, it's a trick, but after doing it enough, I'm gonna say I don't even have any special secrets for that. It's just I don't know. It's like technique and luck, And
yeah,
like I say, it's either you pull it through and you hear it snap and it's okay, or you pull it through and you pull it all the way through and then now you got to
yeah,
desolder
exactly.
and then of course since you pulled it through, it's not gonna
Well,
snap correctly.
and the other thing too is a lot of the stuff I do is I build things on the bike because again, I said I want to try and keep the things short and neat.
Yeah.
And you're working with 2 inches stub of wire, and it's just barely longer than the housing itself to keep it all looking neat and tidy, and that's where it gets hard because you can't get the tension on it. And yeah,
I'll tell you
I
one
like the
thing.
XT90s. I think they're good for the power. They're easy to solder.
Yeah, and that's what
Yeah,
I want to get back to. Like I said, Andersons were nice and the form factor was nice, but I'm thinking if I epoxy XT90 connectors together, I can still do those series parallel harnesses. But the retention force is a little bit high, so but it beats the PP75s by a long shot. But
oh yeah,
PP75s are
yeah, they're massive, aren't they?
huge, and they have like 50
Definitely.
pound retention force. Like you got to be He-Man to
I've
pull
still
those
got a
things.
box of those at home. I've got to. I'm not sure what I'm going to use them for. Throw them at the birds when they're eating my deck or something. I don't know.
Man, you better like using for some like battery backup or something. I've become one of those paranoid people where I got like 4 or 5 UPSs around the house with battery banks on them. That's where I tend to retire my lipo is to like
Yeah,
UPS
yeah.
systems.
I put them in my kids' toys. I put them in the
Power
little
wheels.
battery-powered cars and stuff. Yeah, yeah. Hey,
Get
yeah, listen, man, I got to take off because I got a meeting. I don't know if you want to do a split two-parter or
Yeah,
leave
that's
it at that.
that's fine. I mean, because we're creeping up on an hour, so that's pretty good. And thanks a lot, man. We'll have to catch up probably a little bit later, probably sometime next week. But I'll probably release this
Yeah,
first
yeah.
half. and we'll
Okay.
just
Yeah,
catch up
yeah.
again.
I'll tell you some more about some new frames and bikes and things coming next.
All
Cool.
right, that sounds like
All
a
right, man.
plan.
Catch you
Thanks a
later.
lot. Take care. Bye bye.